Greetings, fellow football managers, and welcome to my 4 top tips for Football Manager 24. Now, what you can see here is Chelsea versus Liverpool in the FA Cup final, and Chelsea have started really well. They've got only 40% possession of the ball, but that's 4 minutes done, so the stats are kind of still settling in a little bit. As you can see, every second of possession they get here, every move they make here is going to skew those stats further and further in their favor. Now, in-game management is part of the fun of playing this game. In fact, I love the in-game side of things. I don't really like too much outside of the game as we watch our players take a little bit of a counter-attack and then get caught offside. It is Darwin Núñez, and that is a bit of a meme for real life. So I've just hit the pause button to give you tip number 1, and that is, if I can get this screen up here, for whatever reason, it seems to want to fade away. Isn't that a song? Yes, it is. But the point is, you can get a quick view of the opposition team as well as some match stats and stuff like that. You probably can't see it here, but they're playing a 4-2-3-1. So let's actually go into opposition instructions and have a better look at that. I'm pretty sure we've covered it in other videos, but if you see the offsets of the players, such as the two midfielders here, Caicedo and Fernandes, when they're so dramatically offset, it obviously means that one of them is probably on a drastically different role and duty to the other. So Fernandes looks really deep. He could be a halfback or something like that, just judging by this picture. And Caicedo could be something like a volante support. So just looking at a screen like this can give you a little bit of vital info. It also looks like Nkunku here is a tad deeper than Sterling. Palmer's in the middle there. So Nkunku's probably in a support duty. Sterling is probably the one of the three there in an attack duty, while Palmer is also in support most likely, but a slightly more aggressive role than Nkunku despite being in support. That is not the tip though. That is bonus tip 0.5. The tip here, the actual tip, is to try and get a mental picture of this screen and overlay that on top of this screen upside down. That sounds pretty hard, right? But what you're trying to do is overlay. Remember that word, overlay your formation and your opponent's formation. So I can already remember that Chelsea have a back line of 4. That immediately means that my forwards, there's 3 of them, they've got a one-man overload over there. You can see this. And again, we have their left back, who is Nunsi over there. He seems to be the slightly more attacking one, whereas James looks pretty deep. He's probably an inverted fullback or something like that. So it already looks like we might be 3-on-3 if Nunsi gets forward. The next line then is going to be Chelsea's 2 DMs who are going to be parked in my very vacant AM area. Now, I do have 2 CMs, but there is one strata of difference between those 2 or those 4 players, meaning that if I want to press their DMs, my 2 CMs are going to have to leave their positions, or at least move out of position a little bit to actually press them. Do I think that's a problem or not remains to be seen. But the fact of the matter is that there is space in this midfield. The players are not one on top of each other. Unlike the DM, Gravenberch, if we look at this, is right on top of Nkunku. So there's not going to be much room in this area, in my DM and their AM. That's going to be fairly congested because of that one-on-one. The space is here. So I need to now factor that in terms of whatever decisions I make in terms of pressing. As I said, if I want to press their 2 DMs, I might have to let these 2 guys step out of position or something like that. I might want to play a higher line just to make sure that my CMs start a bit closer. I might have to play tight marking to just keep them up there. There's a lot of decisions I need to make, and Chelsea have a really good chance of being the dominant team in terms of possession if they just keep the ball with their DMs. However, I can turn it around and say their DMs will have to come out of position a little bit, or their AM will have to drop back quite a lot to be able to press my 2 CMs. So as you can see, this tactical setup right here does not have a playmaker. So where would I put a playmaker if I wanted to? I would probably put it in one of these two positions. Again, if I take a look at this, and I know Caicedo's the one going forward, he's also a very defensive kind of player. He's a ball-winning player. Even if you don't know Caicedo from real life, you can just take a look at his stats. That's 18 tackling, pretty decent aggression. I think his aggression's pretty low, given some of the fouls he commits. He's also very, very quick for his kind of profile, which means he should be a very good presser. So I probably don't want my playmaker on the right-hand side of my midfield. Again, looking at that overlay, I would want my playmaker here in this particular position. So I'm not playing with a playmaker, but again, that overlay lets me know the best position to have a playmaker is this guy over here. The DM, so if I was playing something like a deep-lying playmaker in defense, that would be really risky because these guys have a support duty AM right on top of that position. So that's always something to think about in terms of the overlay. Remember that Football Manager 24 could be infinite in terms of variations when it comes to tactic versus tactic. So you might build the best tactic ever, but it just doesn't work in a particular game because of how the opposition is lined up. You can use this kind of mental trick of doing an overlay of the opposition team over your team or vice versa to try and then figure it out. Look at the man versus man relationships. Obviously, it gets a little bit more complicated than that later on, but this is something to look at. Okay, I'm just going to let this game progress a little bit as I just shut off this little annoying screen. And as we see, again, Chelsea are doing really, really well. They're getting the bulk of the kind of momentum, I would say. I have picked a slightly rotated team. We've got youngsters like Kwanzaa, a backup player like Matip, Kelleher. Gravenberg at DC, or DM rather I should say, is probably not the biggest thing. But again, you can see that Chelsea are having a little bit of joy in this area with these two players, and then they've got these three players back there. That is really, really good for possession, and they've clawed it back up to 49%. On the plus side for me, Enzo has already got himself booked. So that will be a little bit of a thing. Again, making this guy here, my left central midfielder, the playmaker, is right now a really good idea because even if Enzo presses him, he might not be able to tackle very effectively. Although to be fair, Nkunku looks like he's ready to come down to this side and maybe even mark McAllister. Is that happening? I'm not quite sure, but they are really close, aren't they? So that's something to think about for sure. It could just be that Caicedo is pushing up into that area beyond him and that's why he's pushing to the right-hand side and almost scoring a goal. So tip number 2, we don't actually need to be in match right here. Tip number 2, going back to my tactics, is less is more. You probably know this already if you've watched a couple of my videos, but I like to go with a minimal approach in terms of my tactics. That also goes for player instructions, although I've just clicked on the guy with 2. The others, as you can see, I'm just cycling through them slowly. They don't have any player instructions on them. All of this stuff is pure default. This stuff is obviously not default. What I'm trying to say is you should have a few things here which define your tactical philosophy. For example, for me, it's playing out of defense is a big thing for me. Distributing 2 center backs kind of just reinforces that play out of the back kind of thing. Counter press and counter attack is a thing that I want to do. That's part of my tactical philosophy. Out of possession instructions, just getting a little bit further up the field. The higher defensive line just pushes up a little bit more, and obviously the high press to win the ball as high as possible, and obviously more often, so players are allowed to leave their positions a little bit more than usual to be able to press, to try and generate those 2-on-1 presses and stuff like that. Prevent short distribution is another big game changer of a thing. That will make sure that your team gets really high when the opposition goalkeeper has the ball. So to be honest, these little instructions, so we've got 4 here, we've got 3 over here in transition, and we've got only 1 over here. That is enough to build a coherent, logical kind of identity for how you play. You don't need to click everything. I've been through this in a couple of other videos as well. If you just click everything, you are generating complete chaos. A lot of tactics that you find on the internet look a bit like this. And yes, they work for various reasons. I've always suspected that some of those reasons are just breaking the game engine. Football Manager 24 is one of the most realistic versions of Football Manager that Sports Interactive have been able to put out in the recent past. But it is still an engine. And I think in one of my previous videos, it might have been this one up here, I'm pretty sure I actually crashed the game due to the combination, the cauldron The absolute witch's soup of roles that I was able to combine in that one tactic crashed the game. So if you kind of click everything, you're probably not going to crash the game, but the stuff that your team is going to be doing, there's a very high chance that your tactics are going to be working without you knowing how. And that defeats the purpose of playing this game. Yeah, you'll win a few. If that's what you want, feel free, download a tactic, do it, whatever. But if you want to actually just enjoy the fun of designing tactics, kind of making the game dance to your will, getting what you want to see in the match engine, if you want to try and learn all of that, you should start from less and work things one by one. For me as well, it gives me the ability to kind of tweak forwards as well as backwards. If everything is kind of pressed, I can't move forward in any way. I can only unpress everything and then go back to something that feels a little bit more vanilla. Whereas from here, I can focus left, I can focus right, I can focus middle without destroying my tactical identity. If I'm winning 1-0 and I need to hold the result, what do you think I do? Let me just count it off. 3, 2, 1. There's only one change I make here. I don't go to counter, or what is it called now? Cautious. I don't go down to defensive. I don't go down to very defensive. I don't even click time wasting on, which is something you can do. The only thing I do genuinely is shift this wingback attack down to something like wingback support, sometimes wingback defend, sometimes fullback support, something like that. As a secondary thing, I might even bring down this right back here. I might bring him down to fullback support, might bring him down to wingback defend or something like that. I don't need to do anything more to go defensive on this tactic or to hold a result on this tactic, because this does keep a little bit of possession. It does press high. It does all kinds of good things. The only hole it leaves is on this side. This tactic compromises that left-hand side of defense, and it kind of allows the opposition right winger to take advantage. So that is the one big danger of this tactic. But I wouldn't know that if I had everything else clicked. I wouldn't have a clue as to what's going on. Which brings me to tip number 3. Let's just discard all of these changes. Tip number 3 is going to full match. Now, if you have watched my videos previously, you probably know this already. I talk a lot about switching to full match because that really allows you to see everything that is happening when the ball kind of goes out and there's a throw in, it's deep in your half, and then suddenly you get a highlight. Your guys are throwing in over here and you're going, oh no, this can't be good. You're right, it isn't good. The opposition wins the ball from that throw in, they counter press or something, and they score a goal or they get a chance. And then you wait another 5 minutes, you don't get a highlight again. I have done a couple of videos on this before, linked up here, but you want to have full match on so you can understand what on earth is going on, what all those little changes you make, what kind of effect they have, where your tactic is breaking down, all of that. Because again, this is a bit of a reiteration. I'm not going to go further down on this. If you want to know more about the benefits of full match, just check out a couple of my more recent videos, stuff like build-up play, countering build-up play. That kind of explains a little more about the benefits of full match. Okay, the last tip, and to be honest, this is probably going to be the biggest one, so if you've sticked around for it, I'm glad you have. This is all about understanding movement. So tip number 4 is understand what is going on the field, the movement of your players. I've just paused it over there. We've just seen Robertson, who is my wingback attack, move the ball up here. To be fair, he was on the ball, so it was kind of on the ball movement versus not on the ball movement or off the ball movement. We've seen our wingback support get fairly high. That is our defensive midfielder defend. We've got a pretty flat 2 between our box-to-box midfielder, I think, on the right, and our central midfielder support on the left. And then we've got our forward 3. So this is pretty easy to understand. Although, again, just looking at the orientation, we've got Mo Salah really far up the field. Darwin probably not quite as much, but this guy is more doing something supportive. So he was kind of offering a short option rather than bombing into the box. These two guys were kind of trying to bomb into the box because they're on attack duties. So remember what duties do. An attack duty is going to try and do all of the actions, or he's going to try and prioritize all of the actions it needs to get a goal. Whether that is get into the box, whether that is shoot, whether that is play across rather than keep possession, stuff like that. That is going to be more likely to score a goal. So that's what they will do. And that plays out in movement as well. They will try and get as close to the goal as possible given their role. So if we look at role, wingback attack is naturally a get further forward role. This is locked. Get further forward is part of the role. So that wingback attack will make as many forward runs as possible. This guy over here on the right hand side, it's also locked. Wingback support is also locked, get further forward, but it is in a supporting role. So he will be a little bit more conservative than the other guy. He will balance out his responsibilities a little bit more, but it's still a very aggressive role. These guys are extremely aggressive. This guy is too, but not quite as much as this guy here. So he will now and then offer the supporting option, as he is doing here on the field that we see in full match. Again, this probably would not have been a highlight because it came to nothing and it's leading to a back pass here. So unless something absolutely crazy happens, this wouldn't have actually been a highlight. But just by playing through full match, you can see these little things and learn how your tactics work. And maybe you wanted more players in the box, but your two supporting central midfielders are not going to be doing that. So now you can start to make a change. We can, let's say, put the CM support to get forward. Or you know what, let's do it on the other side because of what we know from our overlay already. We can choose something like a Mezzala or just very simply a central midfielder attack. Let us make that change. See you in a second. Okay, so we've just had a set piece and the ball has gone out, which means our new tactics will be in the match engine now. So let's try and have a look as soon as this corner probably finishes at how exactly the kind of movement on field, what is happening, how that has changed. Okay, we've scored a goal that had nothing to do with the tactical tweaks. That was more to do with set pieces. If you want to know how to set up set pieces, check out this video over here. Shameless plug. Okay, it looks like Chelsea have finally let us get on the ball. We're actually countering, so it'll take a moment to actually set up. I'm just going to stop it there immediately. 2 seconds after we get on the ball, we can already see how things have changed. It looks now that McAllister and Gravenberch are almost in a double pivot, while Elliott has gone up and he's a lot closer to our forward line. So he's not really offering much. Again, the ball goes all the way back to our center backs and he's still all the way up here. So that's what attack duty does, especially in a role like central midfielder. Look at this. He has no chance of getting on the ball from where it is, but before he would be somewhere here in the midfield. Now he's all the way up there and he will look to get in the box if Robertson is able to progress the play a little bit further. Maybe not as aggressively as these guys. And also he does have a move called come deep to get ball. So that might explain why he isn't pushed up as far as he could be. But a player other than Elliott, maybe with a different PPM set, might actually get as far as Nunsi up here. So the basic point there is very, very interesting. You can change up your movement just by changing role, and therefore you need to have an idea of what the different roles do and what they do to your movement. Only then can you kind of design the attacking patterns and whatnot, the patterns of play that you want to see. So the point here is understand which of your players are going forward. So Robertson obviously in wingback attack, by nature, he has get further forward. The player himself has PPMs to get forward, or player traits, or whatever they're called now. So that guy's going to bomb all the way up here. So he's going to leave your defense when you're on the ball, and he's going to get up there. That means also in transition, he's going to get caught up the field quite a lot, which is why I said when I want to switch into more defensive mode in this formation, I tune this role down immediately. Same thing on the right-hand side. Right now, Elliott is getting up like crazy. Salah is getting up like crazy, but also coming inside because he's an IF. So you need to understand exactly where these players are going to be. And then this wing area, the corner flag, is kind of going to be free. You don't really have a player attacking that corner flag, but you do have Gomez coming in really late in the attacking move. But early in the attacking move, there's nobody attacking this corner flag over here. Whereas on this side, Robertson is definitely doing that. So if you actually want to attack that corner flag and put some pressure on Nunsi, you probably want Salah to be a winger, you want Gomez to do more overlapping, you want Elliott on a Mezzala attack or something like that. So trying to understand exactly what's going on here in these terms of positions with the roles and the duties, understand how all of those different variables interact with each other and place your players in different areas of the pitch. And then watch how all of that happens with full match. And then you'll be able to make little tweaks in game. as we watch Darwin just clatter the post again. But yeah, if you understand all of that stuff, if you kind of understand what's happening there and then turn it on full match and make sure that it is happening exactly how you thought, or just start learning it and then kind of get a good picture of what's going on, you can then start making the changes and the little tweaks to those different things to actually see what you want to see, get the players in the right areas, target particular opponents, things like that. You can engineer that with 1 or 2 clicks once you understand what's going on via full match and via getting on top of your roles, your duties, and all of that kind of thing. So thank you very, very much. Apologies for being a little bit slow because the sun is out, the outdoors is calling, and I'm kind of getting really deep into golf again. And as you can probably imagine from the kind of videos that I do, I'm a little bit of an obsessive personality. And let's just say that my prime project right now is trying to shoot as many pars and birdies as I can. Either way, I will talk to you in the comments below. Thank you very, very much.